This week, Rich Mogull from FireMon is with us to discuss the turbulent cloud security market. Then Andrew Hindle from Identiverse joins us to talk about digital identity. Finally, in the enterprise security news, shifting left shifts Sonar Source up to the 8th largest cybersecurity unicorn thanks to a near $500 million funding round. Early stage funding continues to diversify through new categories, more geographically diverse startups. We also discuss some unicorn trends, 10 new unicorns in the last 80 days. Devo acquires Cognos to replace the SOC with a tiny shell script. Sophos acquires SOC.os to outsource the SOC. Tenable acquires attack surface management startup BitDiscovery, using flashing lights to authenticate transactions and using the metaverse to log into your password manager. All this and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Workloads protected by VMware are the safest workloads in the multi-cloud. Private cloud, public cloud, any cloud. Stronger, with distributed protection to the API and everything east-west, inside, and cross-cloud. Stronger, with 3 layers of detection, trusting nothing and seeing everything, even the best hidden bad actors. Stronger, with an SE Labs AAA certified advanced NDR that brings the multi-cloud together for the win. You've got workloads, we've got security. VMware Security. Simply stronger. Visit securityweekly.com/VMware to learn more. Attackers are only getting more proficient, so how can you proactively adapt your cybersecurity strategy? Core Security by Help Systems helps you uncover and prioritize the risks that pose the biggest threat to your organization. Core Impact is a penetration testing tool that safely finds and exploits vulnerabilities using the same techniques as attackers. You can conduct advanced pen tests with ease using certified exploits and automations. Take your engagements to the next level by pairing with Cobalt Strike, a threat emulation tool ideal for adversary simulations and red team operations. Learn more at securityweekly.com/core security.
Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy Johnny Day. This is episode 271, recorded on Thursday, April 27th, 2022. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me is the Master of Marketing, the Mayor of Mayhem, Tyler Shields. How are you?
Wow, I have to say that introduction is the best introduction I've had all day. Oh, it's the only introduction I've had all day.
Well, got to make it good.
Indeed,
also joining me.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was going to move into something else. You go.
Also joining us is the Wizard of Wi-Fi, the Warlord of Wireshark, Larry Pesci. How are you?
I am doing well, and that is arguably also the best introduction I've had all day.
Tyler, can you tell I've been listening to a lot of All In?
You know, it's funny when you start. That's what I was going to say. It sounds like an all-in introduction.
Yeah. I can't claim to be completely original there, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. And Larry and Paul have always done something like that over in Paul's Security Weekly. So it gets a bit. I mean, you do a show enough times, and you got to insert things to have more fun with it. But I did mention today is Johnny Day. Usually we pick some kind of ridiculous national or international holiday that's made up, for somebody to sell more pickles or chicken or something like that. But today is Johnny Day because today is the last day that we've got Johnny in studio. One of our production crew is leaving us. And we're going to say goodbye to him today. And actually, after we do both the interviews and the news segment at the very end of ESW today, it'd be great if y'all could, if you want to, you can join us in the, we've got an audio group. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I think it's called After Party on the Discord. So you get plenty of time to join the Discord. I believe under special events, you'll see a channel called After Party, and we're all going to jump in there with Johnny and say goodbye to him. How long is Johnny?
No. How long
Love
is
it.
Johnny?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good imitation.
Oh gosh, the days they all run together because they it's been so much fun over the years that it's it's been 4 5.
You've been doing this for 4 or 5 years with this crew, Larry?
I've been doing this with this crew for 16 years.
Holy smokes, man. I've been doing it way less than that. And I have to say, because of Johnny, it's not just because of Johnny Day, but in honest to God, all truthfulness, Johnny Blaze is absolutely one of the most fantastic people that I've ever worked with on any show that I've ever done. He's just such a good dude.
Agreed.
Of
We
course,
are sad to see him
I'll
go.
never tell him.
And here we are making Goose switch between cameras while he's trying to get Adrian back on Skype at the same time.
Yeah, and anything we can do to mess with the production crew. And I'll never tell Johnny I actually like him, right? So
yeah, it's a good thing he's not. Wait, what? He's not listening.
Did you lose me?
it was the most wonderful 2 minutes without you there, Adrian.
Aha. Where'd you lose me?
Purple.
We lost you. We lost you specifically at the part where you looked like this.
Right.
You were talking about Johnny. Talking about.
Oh, okay. So right then, yeah. So I can't remember if I mentioned it after that, but if y'all want to hang on with us, we have a audio only channel called After Party in our Discord, and we're all gonna hang out there after ESW ends around 5:00. So if you want to say goodbye to Johnny, that's your opportunity to do it in person, somewhat in person. All right, a few announcements here. Security Weekly is a community sponsor of B-Sides Knoxville, which means that in lieu of giving us money, they sent us lots and lots of swag to give away to attendees for free. Lots of good stuff to give away to folks here on May 13th when B-Sides Knoxville happens here in Knoxville. And if you want to come to that, you can grab tickets at bsidesknoxville.com. And we'll probably have some old Hack Naked stuff. We'll have a variety of, I think, a mix of new and old stuff to give away there. Also, tune in on May 4th for our next Security Weekly Unlocked webcast, Deploying Cloud Applications Securely with Paul Asadorian and our first interview guest today, Rich Mogull. Live attendees will have a chance to win a $100 Hacker Warehouse gift card. To register, you can go to securityweekly.com/webcasts. Also, don't forget to check out our library of on-demand webcasts and technical trainings that we've done in the past at securityweekly.com/on-demand. Also, I'm betting $20 right now that Paul makes some kind of May the 4th be with you jokes on that webinar. So attend to find out if I'm losing $20 or not. All right, for our first interview today, the topic is the turbulent cloud security market. We're excited to have Rich Mogull, SVP of Cloud Security at Firemon, with us today. And Rich is widely known for his work as an industry analyst, first with Gartner, and then with the firm he co-founded, Securosis. He's one of the foremost experts on cloud security and has created and delivered all kinds of training on cloud security. You might have seen him at Black Hat delivering some of those trainings. Also helped drive development of some of the standards that we have for cloud security. So Cloud Security Alliance's V4 guidance and the training associated with that. And if that wasn't enough, he co-founded, grew, and successfully exited a cloud security vendor. Welcome, Rich.
Thanks for having me.
So yeah, lots of stuff. And like we didn't even comment on your volunteer work. You do a lot.
Yeah, I short attention span. I get bored easy. I thought it would get better as I got older, and no, yeah. Apparently, I have no ability to mature as a human being. So,
yeah. Speaking of maturity, we may also know Rich for being a ginger and also too short for being a stormtrooper.
Why, yes, I am too short, but I'm still a stormtrooper. So I've got my helmet sitting right over there.
Yep. Yeah. Aren't you a little
one
short?
Of my hobbies is 501st. Yeah.
Nice. All right. So I think the last thing I mentioned in your bio there was Disrupt Ops. So it was pretty exciting seeing you starting that company and seeing things get going there. So maybe catch us up a little bit on what happened with Disrupt Ops. You got acquired by or merged with Firemon. What's going on there, and how does Disrupt Ops fit in with Firemon now?
Yeah. So years ago, I was presenting at Black Hat. Last minute, I was a backup speaker. I was, really hungover because I had just finished teaching for 4 days and enjoyed the speaker party the night before. And I did some demonstrations on stage of some cloud security automation. Well, it took about 2 years of people asking me for copies of my code to realize we might as well build this into a company. We did that, and then we got acquired over the summer by Firemon. Now, it's kind of a totally weird acquisition because the part of it was to help bring Firemon into the cloud. The other part was they liked our management team. So we were acquired, but our CEO of Disrupt Ops, he had actually founded Firemon. He took Firemon back over. Our COO took over. Our VP of product took over. So all of our management, and then now including myself as of a couple of weeks ago, have kind of moved into these senior roles at Firemon. Much bigger company. There's plenty of other executives and roles that were over there, but that's where we are today. So I decided it just looked really interesting. And as someone who kind of started a product, I mean, this was like scripts I was doing demos with, I kind of wanted to see it through. So I decided to join Firemon mostly full-time and kind of take on this role of help driving the cloud strategy forward.
Yeah. No, I remember seeing some of those scripts in action in one of the, I think it was a workshop you did. It wasn't a training, but you were doing some really interesting stuff with forensics, basically, like taking
incident response.
EC2. Yeah. Taking the disk and, throwing it, automatically analyzing it. Like it opened up my mind to, like, it wasn't a use case I'd even thought of using the cloud for, even having done forensics in my past. Like until that moment, it didn't occur to me that forensics could be so much easier and automated, than it used to be when you go out, physically grab a workstation and hook the hard drive into a Logic Cube device or something like that.
Yeah. And I'm really horrible about this stuff. Like I'll do these like proof of concept demos and I'll just throw stuff away and move on to the next thing. So like that script you saw, there's been entire open source projects doing the same thing, like 5 years after I did that. And I'm not even that great a coder. I'm more of a, when I say hacker, I don't mean in the advanced malware creation and analysis. I mean, hackers, and I hack my crap together and hopefully it works. And that was kind of one of those examples. So it's been kind of cool to see that evolve, but also to take a lot of those concepts, put those into now it's an actual platform. They do not let me code on the platform really much at all anymore, but we've got development teams and everything else. So it's just kind of crazy to go from a couple of demos to, an entire company. So it's been a pretty wild roller coaster. And you've been on the vendor side. It's in the startup side. It's totally a roller coaster. It ain't all good. There's plenty of troughs on the way.
But I think you nailed the formula for a good cybersecurity startup, though. Like I've met a lot of founders that could write code well enough to build that MVP or that POC of what the product should be, and get it to a point where you can bring on professional developers and an engineering team and build it into something great. But I think the key part that you can't fix is not having the right vision at the beginning, and not seeing the gap in the market and all that. And certainly being able to, to put together, regardless of how bad you think your coding is, if it works and you can demonstrate it, like that's often all you need to get a company going.
Yeah. It's all you need to get a company going. But I think as we're going to talk about, when you step into an early market, a turbulent market, something that's ill-defined the way cloud security is, that brings a lot of challenges. And I have absolutely made mistakes all along the way. My co-founders. So we all have really struggled with these issues. And to be honest, I think we still do to a large degree because of kind of the weird swirly nature of what we're all dealing with right now. So, we had that great vision at the start, and then like little things, like I think we jumped too far ahead of where the bulk of the market was. And those are really the more kind of that's what creates those trots that we were talking about on that roller coaster.
Yeah, and before we get to that, you mentioned you were mostly full-time or almost full-time. So it sounds like you're still involved with Securosis, still doing some analyst work there.
Yeah, my partner Mike is still full-time at Securosis, and the Firemon recognized that there's a lot of things I've been doing at Securosis that really would be inappropriate for me to do as in a vendor role. So the work we do at the Cloud Security Alliance, we're doing work on the next version of the CSA guidance, updating training programs. We've got a whole other kind of really cool project we decided to spin up ourselves. And so a lot of that pure research stuff, it contributes to what I'm doing at Firemon, but that knowledge is helpful, but it didn't make sense for Firemon to pay me to do those things. And plus, we've got all existing contracts and stuff wired up for that piece. So the vast majority of my time is on the work I'm doing with Firemon, but I have this carve out for these research activities. So I've stopped doing things like customer consulting sorts of projects. That's, kind of a lot of the bread and potatoes of what I was doing over at Securosis. And now I'm a little freer to focus on the research side of things and then back Mike up on the other stuff.
And I think that makes a lot of sense to kind of, for me, ESW, Enterprise Security Weekly, is my kind of carve out for research and keeping track of what's going on with the market. And, I think that's important, even more important, when you're building products, when you're involved in product strategy and things like that. It kind of helps you keep a reality check with what's going on, in the rest of the market and the rest of the world. So yeah, you mentioned having to pull back a bit after building that product. What was that you found? Like you thought companies were going to be ready to go to this level, but they were only ready for about this. And sorry for the audio people, I'm using my hands. One level's higher than the other. Maybe a level 3 and a level 1.
One of the problems you can run into when you're like doing kind of stuff more on the edge, and I think this is a trap that all of us can fall into, and we have these communities. I mean, Adrian, you and I have known each other for over a decade now, and many others in our community who are kind of often focused on some of the harder problems or the bigger issues. Well, in our case, for me, I focused early on cloud security automation. And when my co-founders came in, so Jody Brazel, who had founded Firemon, and Brandy Peterson, and my partners, Mike Rothman and Adrian Lane, kind of the five of us, I was driving a lot of that early stuff. And it turns out I was solving like problems 3 or 4 for customers, which was, how do you automate your security operations for cloud? And when we started doing this 5 years ago, it turns out most of them were at stage 1, which is just tell me what the heck I have in the cloud in the first place, and show me what it is and show me how it's configured. Now that evolved into the cloud security posture management market. And that first problem was visibility. And then maybe the second problem was observability. And the third problem was remediation. And we jumped to remediation and kind of like wavered back and forth a little bit in the middle. And, this is like kind of the dirty internal secrets of you don't get it right and you're looking for market fit. And it was a very valuable lesson to kind of take a step back and like, what are the first problems people need to solve today? And I probably shouldn't make them buy something before they realize my product is going to be helpful and useful.
So was the reason that it was too far was that there were other steps that were prerequisites to jumping to remediation, and customers just weren't as comfortable with those stages yet to be able to jump to that point? Was that it?
There was a lot of that. I think a lot of it was, we had capabilities to identify problems, and then we were packaging the automated remediations, and we ran into some interesting issues. And these are things we further subsequently had to solve. A lot of security teams were used to working primarily with like vulnerability assessment compliance tools, and they wanted those compliance reports coming out. And at one point we even had that, but there's like 8 different ways you can solve some of those problems in cloud. So even though you can automate it, automating it so you can properly detect and filter through all those eight different ways. And the end result was the customers They just wanted a dashboard where they could look in, generate a spreadsheet, send it to the developers to fix the problem, because that's what we've always done. What we were trying to do is introduce this different concept of automation and letting the platform do those things for you and getting rid of the spreadsheets and make it more collaborative between the teams. And we just jumped ahead of the market. I mean, and legitimately, like, I'm not saying we jumped ahead of the market as in we're smarter. Legitimately, we forgot that the first problem that they were facing was, oh crap, I have all these new cloud accounts. Just show me my problems. Like, tell me what I have and tell me what I need to fix. And we didn't focus on that visibility. And there's other products and such that did, and those were easier to sell because it fit into the mental models, as well as it was the problem they were trying to solve at that time. Where we were moving on to automation, and one of the things we underestimated was dev teams or cloud teams maybe don't want security automatically fixing their stuff. Security maybe doesn't want the dev teams writing their own security policies into the platform. So we did a poor job of addressing the organizational silos, which weren't there because anybody was like doing anything wrong. That's just how we've done things. We built that because it was the right way to handle our other security problems. So we just got too out there. We didn't solve the first problem customers need to solve, which is tell me what my problem is now. We kind of were jumped into, we're going to fix that for you, or we're going to help you fix that problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I feel like you're taking a bit more of the blame than you maybe need to, because I feel like, well, and you tell me if I'm wrong, that some of it is that companies weren't exactly sure how to do stuff in the cloud anyway. Yeah. So maybe they're still getting settled in figuring out like what these workflows should be like, what the DevOps security relationship should be like, who should be pushing that button or this button or pushing a policy.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what a lot of that is. It's like understanding the processes, and a lot of how we have normally done things falls apart a bit. So the what I've been talking a lot about lately is like in the last few months, like if we really look at the biggest impact cloud has had in terms of our governance and security, and I hate to say governance because I'm not a governance person, I'm more of a technologist. But if we really look at what the core problem is all of our security and org structures and everything's evolved along with our data centers and our offices. And with cloud, what happened is we got rid of a lot of the physical constraints. So like the fact that we have a network team, somebody to plug the wires into the routers, and the fact that we have different server management teams and different security firewall management and identity like all the different teams that we have, many of those are emergent properties of the environment they were in, which is the physical data centers, where you can't have developers running around building their own servers and plugging and unplugging wires. I mean, it's chaos. It's cats and dogs living together. And that's okay. That's exactly what we needed. But with cloud abstracted a lot of the complexity. Cloud centralized that and distributed at the same time. You've got one user interface you can go into, and you can build an entire virtual data center. And if all you want is a simple network with a little bit of public and a little bit of private, that's all you have to build. And you can literally do it in a web interface or with some API calls. Like, you don't need a network team to do that for you. You don't need the deep expertise of configuring, a Cisco or a Juniper or, whatever kind of routing infrastructure you have. The developers can cover the basics. And that blew everything apart. And the obvious first impact onto the security teams was, show me what I have and how it's configured, because I sure as heck don't know. And I can't just go to a networking team to figure it out. And like I said, we kind of just made some assumptions about where people were that was wrong, and about which problems they needed to solve first. But I think the whole thing, I mean, I love this stuff and it's fascinating. And despite the rough edges and, falling off the bike a few times, including I fell off my mountain bike last weekend. My butt really hurts still, but never mind. I nobody cares.
Yeah,
I care, Rich.
No, I had a mountain biking incident last year and had to regrow most of the skin on this forearm. So yeah,
I was going uphill and it was really slow, but my cleat was loose and I didn't know it. And I just went to pop my foot out because I'm like, oh, okay, I need to like just haul the bike up this part. And I twisted it almost 90 degrees. I still couldn't get it out. And then I went, timber, very slow fall to the side at slow speed, but my seat was up high, so that meant my butt hit the rock and it hurt.
Yeah, you guys have to channel your inner Tyler's workout routine because you'll never get injured. You just never work out.
That's good, and I would look very different at my current age if I.
So Rich, I have a couple questions for you.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I have also done a handful of startups over the years, and I've kind of fallen into similar traps. And sometimes you hit the home run, sometimes you don't. And I appreciate there's a certain amount of timing that comes along with building a startup. And I would argue that a lot of the times the equation of what we're building is not actually that hard from a technical perspective. Like you see the pain fairly quickly, but it's a matter of, am I too early? Am I too late? Will the market get subsumed by some other adjacent market before I can get true business growth? All those kinds of things. So I appreciate the roller coaster ride that you described at the start of the conversation. The question I have is, if we're looking at cloud security market today, specifically CSPM. What's your thoughts on CSPM with regards to the other adjacent cloud security markets, right? And we could rattle off 20 different acronyms. We could rattle off, what is it?
Yeah, but
CNAP,
let's not.
CWPP is CNAP.
CWPP, CNAP, CASM, blah, 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 right? What's your take on CSPM where it fits into that puzzle, right? I have a theory that CSPM is a market that existed for a while and really doesn't exist anymore, because to do any of those secondary markets I just described, you have to essentially do basic CSPM, right? You have to understand what's there and how it works and how it's configured if you want to secure it. So in that thought model, does CSPM cease to exist as an isolated market if it's part of every other market?
Yeah, that is actually an excellent question. It kind of drives it some of the stuff we did when we were coming up with the topic for today. And first of all, as much as I've been negative, like I got a successful exit, so I can't really say we missed the mark. I mean, in the end, we end up addressing something. But this ties into your question: what does CSPM mean? It has been an evolving definition, and the early definition of CSPM, which came out of Gartner, was it was very focused on the configuration visibility piece. Show me what I have. Show me how it's misconfigured. Cloud security posture management. I mean, just show me what it is. And some of the tools had some limited abilities to do remediations. Now, we're finding, for example, for ourselves, that we have to add a lot more, and we keep adding a lot more of the inventory visibility, because that is becoming, for us to do more in-depth. We do cloud detection and response and cloud SOAR and access management, like all these operational things that we're focused on being more of an ops tool. Can't do any of that without the feeds, as you brought it up, Tyler. I mean, you need to know what's there and how it's configured. I would say the key difference is there's still what I would call the baseline CSPM. There's well over 100 vendors who have this capability now. And the focus on that is the base configuration and compliance reports. And there is going to be somebody that needs that top level view, and they're going to need to generate those compliance reports. And not all of the ancillary adjacent markets, products have that or want to do that. Like, we're having the debate. Do we need to add that just to make it easier for someone to buy the stuff that we actually care about? And not that we don't care about that, not that it's important. It's just not, we hit focus on these other problems that we thought we could bring more value to the table, which is, becomes a complex and an interesting question to answer. So I would say there is always going to be the core of what CSPM was, which I would call the vulnerability scanner for cloud and the compliance reports for cloud. Then we see that beyond that is where we see all the fracturing I think you're talking about. So there's a couple of main, what I'm going to call work streams of the fracturing. So shards. So one shard is focused on the workload piece of that. And the workload piece starts bridging into containers, because containers are a major part of the workload. So cloud workload protection originally started as basically AV agents for cloud. I'm overly simplifying, but it's kind of what it is. And now is expanding from the the workload side up into more of the main cloud platform side. So almost in reverse, they're adding more container capabilities and serverless capabilities and more configuration capabilities. So we can like kind of call that the shard one, which is more the workload focused. There's the shard two, which is around identity management. I think that's a much earlier area. We actually have something new there that I love, but you've got pressure coming from the top from the identity governance tools, but then those don't do a great job from the cloud piece. And then you have the federated identity brokers. And so now we're seeing this other intersection. Ooh, my camera's zooming all over the place as my hands move. If anybody wants to know how bad the software is on the new Mac Studio display for handling the camera stuff, now you get to see it. Let me go to a fixed view here. So that would be the next area, or one of the next areas, is these identity management focused pieces. And the reason the configuration matters is you can't really do cloud identity management without integrating the full spectrum, which includes the policies around the cloud resources themselves. So, And that's where we get into the, like, do I have access to that S3 bucket? That could be granted on the S3 side, or it could be granted on the within the IAM side. And I'm using Amazon examples there. Then there's another shard, which is the remediation piece. We are focused. That's one of the things, like, for example, that we built a lot in. That's really nascent in that area as well, just because customers aren't fully always on board with that. But yeah, and then there's all these other really interesting things coming out. Like if you look at like Wiz and Palo are trying to do the cloud security posture management, plus the container security, plus the workload security, plus the infrastructure as code security, plus, maybe attack surface management or analysis pieces. And I hate to talk with this much complexity in how I'm laying this out. It's because at the core, if you think about what cloud is, we're all just running off a bunch of APIs, and we're enriching those and manipulating those in different ways. Yep. And that's why there's can be different ways to solve the same problem, or different audiences that the various vendors are trying to address with their tools to solve those problems. Because the IR team wants it this way, and the compliance team wants it this way, and the traditional security team and the endpoint team, they all want to see things different ways. So I do think it creates a lot of complexity and a lot of confusion. And I don't think that's going to go away. And I think what you said, which is the CSPM, we're hitting the point where some of the analysts are just lumping everything into CSPM. And I think that's falling apart and fracturing. And we're going to start seeing sub-markets develop that become entire markets on their own.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I agree completely. And I think it also sets up an interesting roll-up opportunity, exactly like you talked about, Palo, Wiz, others kind of, rolling up multiple companies and products into a one ring to rule them scenario, which could be fantastic, or simultaneously could, be a dumpster fire. It just depends on how the integration works and how good the company is at acquisitions. But it's neat to kind of track how these markets align. Then the second question that I often wonder is, do we really, from a timing perspective, right? Do we really need to focus on the maturity of the buyer? In particular, everybody talks about, hey, let's cut our business up and, target enterprise versus commercial versus small business, whatever. And that's fine. That's one way to do it. I like making the argument that maybe we should cut our business up and target specific maturity curves of the buyer. The super high growth, high tech, security rock star buyer versus, a slow maturity, just trying to figure out how to put stuff in the cloud buyer, right? And I feel like that's the better curve when it comes to building out some of these products, targeting certain sections of that curve.
Yeah, you raised two really, really good points here. So the first about the one ring to rule them all. What's fascinating about that is they're going to be different buying centers at enterprise scale. And as somebody that is in a position where we have multiple product lines that address different parts of the organization. So like over the past few weeks coming up on board full-time at Firemon, I've had to learn our traditional products, which have some cloud features. So we've got Lumeta for cybersecurity asset management. We've got our network security policy management product, like the core of it, and then we've got my stuff, the Disrupt Ops, the cloud piece, and it's like, yeah, we could tie all of those together into one platform, but then who the hell do we sell it to? And I think, some of the companies we mentioned are going to run into that, and do already run into that, because there's going to be a different group managing the containers versus managing the cloud infrastructure versus the dev teams that manage their own stuff. Where I think becomes interesting is, where can we bridge across those with shared capabilities, but still meet the needs of those teams? But we have our own biased ways we do. We do a lot of stuff with chat ops and Slack, using that to mediate the communications, but we're all going to be like figuring our way down that path. And that's a really interesting problem. And it ties into your maturity. And that's something we tried to kind of do, was like, all right, well, we'll focus on the born in the clouds, and they do have slightly different needs than the traditional infrastructure. But the traditional companies, Tyler, let's be blunt, they got more money. Like the true cloud unicorns, they just build their own stuff largely, and they use a little bit of the outside stuff. The large enterprises are the ones that need the more help, and they're all over the map. And the really interesting thing that I found before we even started Disrupt Ops, just as part of my core Securosis research, is any large organization will have pockets of high maturity and pockets of low maturity. And the complexity for the teams managing that have to manage across all of those is, how do you address like this new, like you work for a bank, and that bank has this new customer facing app, and that was born in the cloud, and maybe there's one connection back to a database on the back end. That's very, very, very different than like refactoring and rehosting back office infrastructures, than migrating data centers. So I don't think we actually can just target by maturity levels. And I don't think we as security professionals, outside of the vendor side of it, as trying to target educational materials and strategies, because most larger orgs in particular will have multiple maturity levels. So what I've kind of moved down the path of, and we built a maturity model, over at Securosis with Ions. And one of the things that we really emphasize when we give the maturity model to people is, you're going to have a baseline, which is like your average rating, and you need to recognize the pockets and use that to help drive your strategy. Like, let's figure out what the pockets are doing well and see if we can operationalize that across the rest of the organization. Or, let's figure out where we're doing really bad, and maybe that's where we focus more efforts to get them up more to like, a level 3 baseline or something along those lines. And does that fit in with, does that kind of fit in with what you were thinking?
Sorry, couldn't find the mute button. The mute button's always always a mystery to me. No, I think that's spot on, right? And I love the analogy you gave. I hadn't really thought about the pockets of maturity. I think the pockets of maturity is a really interesting way you think of it.
It's also the name of my band. So
Pockets of Maturity. I love that. That's a great name. We should jam together sometime. But here at Jupiter One, we're targeting those pockets of maturity within some of the enterprise buyers right now as we continue to sell up the enterprise stack. So yeah, no, I definitely find it to be spot on.
You deal with this exactly, because we hover in different parts, and we overlap. We're going to compete and stuff and not compete. And same with Adrian. Same with any of us. Anybody who's doing anything in cloud is going to be dealing with these issues and overlapping and carving out spaces and figuring out who to target and the levels of maturity within the customers. And I think we're still years away from any of that settling out, because it is hard to move ships into this new realm, and it does take time. And the cloud changes so quickly. The providers change the ground under our feet as we're running the race, and that's okay. I enjoy that stuff, so it's great. But it does make life a little harder.
I love the direction this went. We do need to wrap in a few, but I wanted to throw something out and get see how it hits Tyler, you and Rich. 3 or 4 times a month, I advise companies on asset management, on their asset management program at Ions. And Rich, I had forgotten you were faculty at Ions as well. But one of the conclusions that I came to is that maybe it's okay to have several products doing kind of the same thing. because you have different parts of the business that have different needs for those products, and asset management is one of those things where you see a lot of duplication of effort. But how the data is delivered, how it's handed to people is different. And honestly, companies where the service desk, maybe part of IT, security actually have different asset management databases, from what I've observed, seem to function better than a company that's trying to force everyone to use ServiceNow. And the challenges I've seen there is just that, that like none of them can agree on how to do it, and ServiceNow has to be customized to meet everyone's individual needs, and then they have to hire some ServiceNow consultants to customize it, and it's just this never-ending project that never gets there. Whereas if they just split up and got what they individually needed, they'd probably be fine.
Look at it this way. Let's take a story, and if you look at the origins of Spiderman, I can watch it in a movie. I can read it in a comic book. I can read it in a regular book. I can read it in an audio book. Like, it's still the same core myth. And I'm using that because if I look at and this is not a view I always had. This is a view that I have grown into probably over the past 3 to 5 years as we've kind of had to deal with some of these things. It's, if I have a source of truth, how I present that information should help. There's different audiences that need different things out of that. I was dealing with this today. This is like really dirty behind the scenes kinds of things. Like if I think about a cloud network, for example, and cloud assets. Well, we have an asset management tool that came out on premise. We've got an asset management tool or a network management tool that for regular on-premise that was very firewall focused. And then we have our cloud tool. All three of those things need the exact same data, but they're using different use cases and addressing different audiences. And I think if we try to force people into using just one way of doing that, it's just not necessarily going to work for customers the same way as if let's give them, maybe we build a service to optimize how we collect and build the database for that, but then we can present it to help somebody solve the problem they're facing at that time. Customization and addressing the right audience, I think, is really critical. I think the problem with some of these massive platforms is, it's hard because you're duplicating development effort, to be honest. And everybody wants the efficiencies of having one thing. But like, I do like healthcare stuff. I'm a paramedic. I go into hospitals and the EMRs are horrific. They have all this wonderful data and everything else, but because they're trying to address an emergency room doctor and a radiologist and a nurse and the lowly paramedic, me, all doing, we all have different things we're trying to do using the same base tool. And that means we all hate the tool equally. I don't know. I would just hope that there's opportunities to build different ways of attacking those problems.
Yeah, and thankfully, I think we've got enough funding in the market to make that happen. Certainly it's some of what we're going to talk about in the news segment today. Is we're going to do an update on the number of unicorns out there. But yeah, it's interesting watching all this stuff shake out. Rich, thank you so much for joining us on Enterprise Security Weekly today. Is there anything you want to, any announcements or shout outs you want to give before we let you go?
No, just everybody be good to one another. It's an ugly world out there.
You going to be at RSA Black Hat doing any training this year?
We will. So I'll be at RSA doing some customer stuff, and then I'm giving a talk actually on the show floor for the first time. And then Black Hat, we're doing training. So I teamed up with Will Bengtson. He's over at HashiCorp. He's like one of the best cloud security people I've ever met. And we're doing incident response. So I can't remember the exact name that we used this year. Oh, I think it's a live fire incident response with attack simulations and defenses and log analysis and all sorts of cool stuff. Nice. That sounds awesome. Rich, thanks again for joining us today. And stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to talk digital identity with Andrew Hindle from Identiverse.